Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. As Russia intensifies its attacks and strikes civilian targets like Sumy, global leaders are scrambling to respond with rhetoric, sanctions, and potential weapon systems. President Zelenskyy is calling for air defenses, even inviting Donald Trump to see the devastation firsthand. What will Europe do next? Well, joining us today on TVP World to examine the stakes is Vira Konstantynova, former foreign policy advisor to the chairman of the Ukrainian Parliament. As a respected expert in international security and Ukrainian politics, she offers us a unique insight into Ukraine's position at this turning point. Hello, ma'am, and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning. My pleasure to be with you.
So one of the focal point is, of course, the recent American reaction to these strikes. And the U.S. President Donald Trump has made some rather inflammatory comments once again. Where do we stand now, and what's the reaction? How do you interpret Trump's various comments when it comes to these strikes?
Of course, Ukraine treats such statements with caution because, of course, we are unfortunately witnessing the problems with the so-called ceasefire that was agreed according to the public statements. But at the same time, I believe that indeed that's not a mistake from the Russian side. Strike on our Sumy, on our Kryvyi Rih, that caused the civilian death and significant damages, because it's not a mistake, it's a strategy, it's a tactic, a wartime tactic that's absolutely obvious in terms of the goals, military goals that Russia is still trying to fulfill in terms of attacking Ukraine. So in my conclusion, I would say that I hope that we would see, and we also heard the statement made by Secretary Rubio, and with clarity, with understanding that who is the aggressor and who is the victim. So I believe there is some kind of approach in terms of dealing with the Russian strikes, especially after the meeting between special representatives of the U.S., Mr. Witkoff, and President Putin. So unfortunately, I have to recognize that I see lack of understanding sometimes in terms of what Russia is doing against Ukraine and against Ukrainian civilians.
Right, like you mentioned, when it comes to the meeting between Steve Witkoff and Putin, they seem to be sending a relatively positive message, which is a little bit different from what we are seeing on the ground. And there's also some controversial statements there as well, even though they're not very specific about what are the exact contents. I think they were hinting at some sort of territorial concession and believing that U.S. and Russia can mend their relation while the bombs are still dropping. Can you give us a little bit of comment on that?
I would say that I would like to remind our audience that there was already an attempt made by the previous administration of the United States in terms of dealing with or normalizing the relationship with Russians. So the result is obvious. Russia attacked Ukraine. Russia conducted war against democratic world. So unfortunately, again, I have to admire that we are on the same. We have the same problem right now between U.S. and Russia, because obviously the Russian side is not ready for constructive dialogue, dealing with the, disarmament or, for example, the issues devoted to the European security architecture. So in this term, President Trump attempts to restore or to renew or whatever we call it, the relationship with the Russians. I'm pretty sure that the result would be the same as for in terms of strategic prognosis. But at the same time, I think that it's necessary to have some kind of dialogue between global players, not only with Russians, but also in terms of Chinese threat and in terms of understanding that the global world order is at stake right now, due to the actions of Russian Federation as well as due to the actions of the so-called axis of countries like Iran or North Korea, and that's a responsibility of global powers to deal with the threats and issues devoted to non-proliferation or disarmament. Again, Russian strikes on Ukraine sent a signal to Washington as well, to the U.S., to the European partners of Ukraine, that Russia is not ready to constructive dialogue on the ceasefire. Unfortunately, currently we are on this stage, and all attempts of our European as well American partners to stop this war are highly valued, but at the same time we need a practical steps and practical solutions. Currently we heard declarations, not the practical steps, unfortunately.
All right, so sticking on the practical side of things, what would you like to see? Do you think that the Ukraine's push for a Patriot system and the potential supply of the Taurus missile from the German to Ukraine will be enough? Or do you think that any other sort of security guarantees, or what can the European Union and the United States do to help alleviate the situation?
I believe that actions or practical steps in terms of peacekeeping mission or mission of deterrence from the European side could be very fruitful and very useful in terms of stabilizing situation, not resolving it. The problem with the understanding that Russian strategic goal to destroy Ukraine's statehood and Ukrainian nation didn't change and wouldn't change, unfortunately. If we talk about the threats and the solutions, I believe that it could be in complex with the support of our American partners, but with the leading role of our European colleagues. So in this term, I'm a bit optimistic because I observe the actions and steps taken by our European partners in deterrence, in military domain, in military industry. So, but again, these steps require time, and this a problem in terms of Russia's war against Ukraine, because Russia conducts war not only against Ukraine but against the Europe as well. So from my point of view, I believe that we are on the initial stage, and we need to force our efforts to speed up our efforts in terms of constructing the new deterrence posture, I would say, because in terms of Russian understanding and Russian military doctrine, they see NATO and NATO member states as the threat. That's unfortunately inconvenient truth right now, and inconvenient reality that we all should face with. So in my conclusion, I would say that currently we need all possible support, but not in terms, again, declarations. We need a practical solution right now. And I believe that several components should be on the table. First, it's, of course, European deterrence missions. Of course, it should be American support in terms of intelligence, in terms of air defense. And the third component, it's Ukrainian armed forces. So the Ukrainian armed forces needs the weapons system, needs air defense solutions. And of course, our homework, our task is to develop our industry and to develop our capacities in terms of defending our people and our land.
Right, so we'll have to see how things develop. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it. And thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you.
Cheers. And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.